Hello, I'm Robert Keenis, founder of Working with Humans. I'm joined today by my dear friend and colleague, Alison Arkin. To honor her outstanding career accomplishments, I'm going to read her introduction. Alison brings a coaching approach that combines compassionate Gestalt practices with her C-suite business experience. As an HR leader, she brings a unique combination of experiences: executive leadership, business operations, and coaching acumen. As a vice president for C.A.R.E Enterprises in California, Alison directed multi-state operations and created strategy and processes for large-scale operational and clinical initiatives. As a director of strategic initiatives, she led org effectiveness, succession, and performance management at Cleveland Clinic. In the change management / global talent space at the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company, Alison partners with teams to work creatively to execute strategy and change in a more engaging and inclusive way. Alison is a Gestalt professional certified coach and an ICF professional certified coach who gives back through executive coaching. She sees that as leaders manage the demands of their professional and personal lives, performance is rarely the problem. Internal barriers get in the way of their influence, impacting the results and life balance they want. This is the reason I asked to speak with her on the topic of helping leaders get back to work and bring their teams back to work as many states begin restarting their economies. Welcome, Alison. It's good to see you, by the way.
Good to see you. You look so trim and put together.
So what we ultimately want to talk about is how can leaders effectively, bring their teams back together after everything we've just been through, right? And how do they make sure that they acknowledge kind of everyone's shared experience while still acknowledging everyone's experience may have been different? Kind of having some compassion for the situation itself, but also learning from it. And then still kind of getting everyone back into the mode of work, because some people haven't been may not have been working for months and may not be used to going without day-to-day work for that long, right? So just kind of wanted to get your tips of like, what do you think a leader would want to do first, if you think of it that way?
Well, I think during this coronavirus, we have all become great leaders of ourselves and our lives. Whether we're leaders of others in the workplace or not, we're leaders of how we react to all of this. And the good news is that leaders in organizations, whether it's manufacturing, retail, healthcare, independent business, they're already doing this. So our dialogue is more to reinforce what they're already probably doing quite well. And what I'm hearing leaders are doing is showing empathy. Because they are feeling for maybe the first time ever, we are all feeling the same, having the same experience. We might react differently, but we're all suffering, worrying, we're all uncertain. So I thought about the acronym, if we want to nourish employees as they come back and nourish ourselves, I thought about an acronym called E.A.T, E.A.T.
Mm-hmm.
Every article I'm reading and from my coaching sense is that we empathize.
Yeah.
And the A in EAT is ask, and the T is don't tell. So empathize, do more asking, less telling.
So it's really important to acknowledge kind of the emotional side of things when they come back. And again, I see that in everything I've been reading as well.
Right.
Where, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a leader coming back from all of this. And that first meeting that they're having with their team.
Right.
and just kind of thinking through, oh my gosh, how do I even put an agenda together for this? You know, um, I might recognize that there's that emotional component, but there may also have this tension around feeling like I'm being shot out of a cannon. We've got to get back to
Mm,
work. We've got to get revenue right away. We've got to, um, we've really got to start delivering in order to kind of try to make up for things. And how might a leader fight that tension or lean into it in a way that's appropriate, um, while balancing that emotional side?
right. Well, I think our leaders already sense it, yet they may not know how to name it and deal with it for their whole team.
Mm,
Because our team, we have the organization, then we have the team, and then we have the individual.
mm-hmm,
And the metaphor I often use with change management is the change train. And I know,
mm-hmm,
Robert, you know about the change train. The leader and those who say we're not on furlough have been working, and they're the conductor and up in first class, and they've got their luggage, they're on their way. And then others coming back may have a lot of baggage
mm-hmm.
and may be reluctant to get on, and some may not get on that train at all. So what can a leader do with all those people at different parts of the train?
Yeah.
Is I go back to that A and to ask them questions, first of all, about what worked for you when you were on furlough. What are you proud of? And let them tell their stories.
Mm,
And then where did they get stuck? And where are they stuck now coming back to work? And then I would say to each person, what will a successful return to work look like for you?
mm-hmm.
And how can I help?
And then a leader could use, um, kind of what that all is and try to frame it within their broader objectives, if I'm
Yeah,
understanding that correctly. Like as I try to move away from that, or move forward from that, um, and I'm even hearing the grow model and the things that you're saying, that we're talking about the leaders coming in and everyone's coming in with this goal of coming back to, getting back in and getting back going, um, and then acknowledging their reality, acknowledging where they're at, and starting to talk about the objectives for the individual and how that may align with the objectives for the team, and starting to see glimpses of ways of different ways forward, so that
right.
the team can move in a positive direction. And the emotional piece reminds me of the emptying the glass scenario of, okay, I've got to get this out, you know, um, and once everyone is able to be on the same page, or at least be on a shared understanding, they can receive, right? And
Right.
you hear that and what you're saying as well.
And it's interesting you say when everyone can get to a shared understanding.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we were all at a shared understanding prior to coronavirus pandemic.
Mm,
So it may take us a while to get to a shared understanding
right.
because some people might be excited and ready to go, and others are petrified and worried about their families and their grandmother.
Yeah.
So for me, it's an individual approach. And I think a leader can do a lot before people come back, like really good coverage notes by those who've been there.
Mm,
Setting up a buddy system. So you have one person, sort of like onboarding, right?
mm-hmm.
When you onboard as a new employee, you often get a buddy or a mentor.
Mm,
So set some structure because they're going to feel behind and lost and less than. When in reality, they might have learned so much more on a furlough stage and can offer more, but they may not feel that way.
that's true. Um, and how that it makes me think of like people who have teams that are global, that are in different positions, right? Even if, um, maybe they have more essential and folks in areas that are going through things in the middle of it right now, while they're bringing back and I don't like using the word essential in that context, but folks that have had to be on even during the hardest hit times, and then folks that are coming back now that their part of the world is kind of on the way to healing and to moving forward, and all different kinds of mixes, and even coming back in a place where half the team may still not even be back to work, and kind of gradually, maybe having your team come in gradually to all of this, right?
Right.
It it may be beating a dead horse, because what you're describing may work the same way, but how might you see it a little bit differently for folks in that situation?
I once had a therapist share with me to help me with my coaching practice two things. One is to say to someone, what can I do for you today? Particularly someone who's had a loss or is upset. What can I do for you today? All right, so one by one, regardless of where you are in the globe, how can I support you today? And the other thing he taught me is that everything in life boils down to power and control. So how can we empower everyone on the team? And if that means doing a night call, Americans doing calls at night to help empower those in Asia so they're fresh in the morning, we offer that up. So it comes back to that acronym, E.A.T, empathize, ask, tell less.
It's one of those things that it sounds simple. Where do you think leaders are going to need help pulling that off? Where do you see that people might need help? They might not be used to leading in that way, if that makes
right.
sense. And they've just been through their own experiences as well. So their focus it may be easy to have their focus be inward a bit.
Right.
And a myriad of other things that could pop up as barriers for a leader to kind of go through that E.A.T model. How do you think they might be supported in moving into something like that?
So I would encourage them to think to what they've already done really well, because our leaders are doing this, and they've been doing this since back in March when we closed shops, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they've probably learned from their friends and spouses and neighbors how others are doing it. I think those who are not used to leading this way, I've had leaders say to me, well, I'm an introvert, so it's hard for me to go around and chit chat with the team. The team needs you more than ever, and you need them. So if you're an introvert, use email, leverage technology, and even put on your calendar once a week to reach out to people with an article, with an appreciation, something, but calendar it. If you're an engineer and you like process, put it on your calendar, recurring, and think of some way to reach out to a team member. So it becomes a discipline, just like any other process. And then secondly, ask your team for help. Ask the team, how can we support each other? Some leaders are rarely with the team. They're often executive meetings. So perhaps you can set up team captains for certain aspects and ask them to co-create how they want to come back.
That was kind of where, as you were going through the scheduling piece, and that speaks to me, disc style C over here, scheduling check-ins, just not losing track in the hustle and bustle of getting back, just creating some tripwires, some reminders for myself, be very much to my style, but I immediately thought of the other side of it, which was exactly what you're saying. How can you help each other?
Right.
And to your point about, sometimes those leaders are going to be in those meetings, and then sometimes, like you said, they're scattered around the world, and they may have a portion of a team in one area. Um, or it may just be the old challenges renewed, right? Even global teams that have, they don't have more than one person in each country. You know,
Right.
it's always a challenge to build unity and to keep aligned as a group. Um, so yeah, it's kind of, it could be a new thing, but it's uh, definitely a generative way to approach it, is to ask them how they could support each other.
Right. And creating the space, maybe the first 10 minutes of every meeting, create the space to do a check-in and ask if anyone wants to share, hey, when you were out on furlough, or is there something you learned you want to share?
Mm-hmm.
Or set some structure about it. What's the best recipe whether it was your happy hour, your Zoom happy hour, or your family dinner with your circle? What was the best thing you made? People are
Mm-hmm.
baking bread, they're gardening. We are growing through this, even though we're in our homes.
Mm-hmm.
So your team can do the talking. You just need to create the container or the space.
I'm glad you just brought up learning, because that makes me think of the of a bit of learning at a bit of a meta level to that, right? You started baking, you started, you know, you've had to be your kid's teacher for the first time. You or maybe you were just working from home and you don't have kids, and you've had to kind of build new disciplines and new skills, and kind of thinking about um, the skills behind the things they've learned, and how can they leverage that as a team? How can they bring it out and share with each other and get that shared learning experience, and really capture those things that they want to bring back to the workplace,
Mm.
that they want to bring back to their team and share those gifts. Um, you know, I think you could probably use a similar structure of those kinds of asking those kinds of questions. I'll look at it two ways. How do you think a leader could help to kind of capture those skills as a team learning, and help
Right.
each other learn from each other, not just so much, not just share, because there's beauty and there's a catharsis in sharing, but also how can they all learn and build skills as a group, uh, around what's been gained.
So Robert, I was on a webinar about how to sustain your culture through the coronavirus pandemic.
Mm.
You know, how to get back and keep the culture you had, or even make it better. And they were citing studies that said that organizations who work at helping everyone align around their purpose and their values, sometimes they're called core competencies or values, those companies who work to get alignment around that are more profitable.
Mhm.
They have higher engagement and lower turnover, so
Mhm.
higher retention. And that's even more important now. So most leaders have some kind of mission, purpose, customer statement, values. Pull those back to the team. Let's say you have 5 core competencies like you and I share at work, and ask, so how do we live out our core competencies while we were all on furlough? How were you agile? How did you energize your team at home? And now how do we want to bring that to our team? What do we want to do differently? And what do we want to throw out? So I would go with what your company already has.
Mm. And you're just teeing me up great here, because I love what you just said too. The what do you want to throw out? It makes me think of the idea of incorporating something around what's new, what's different, what do I want to keep. Um, you know, I wrote an article on the 3 phases and 2 tensions around the this desire to go back to the way things always were, and then this other possible tension of nothing's ever going to be the same, right? And taking some time to ask the question, um, what, from where we were at, the path we were on before, what needs to stay the same? Where do we want to stay at? And also, what um, what have we learned and what can we gain and what do we need to bring forward. But then the middle piece is, what do we need to throw out? What do we need to get rid of that just, it doesn't work in our new reality? I think they'll find that there's a lot more that's the same, that's different. But I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, we're already throwing out some things for a while until we have a vaccine for this virus.
Mm-hmm.
And that is meeting in conference room where everyone's crammed in elbow to elbow.
Mm-hmm.
We can't do that anymore. We're probably going to throw out rushing from meeting to meeting to meeting without hydrating and washing your hands. I mean, think about how we used to behave.
Yeah.
Go all day without washing your hands.
Yeah, you're just, like you said, boom, 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 meeting,
Right.
meeting. Yep.
And we've thrown out perfection, over engineering and working something because it's so perfect. When it's good enough, launch it and get your customers to give input.
And that brings up for me the idea of perfectionism. You know, when you look at big companies and you look at the book The Innovator's Dilemma, they talk about sustaining innovations and adding more value, adding quality. You know, you're making a better widget, right? And you're perfecting something. And big companies like a Sherwin-Williams, like a Goodyear, like a Gojo, different companies like that, they've become the best at what they are, and they found this perfection niche around this thing, right? And it at times can make it hard to be agile, and we're all learning a lot of lessons around that agility and the perfectionism.
Right.
But to the note of keeping things that were there before, how might a leader balance, or really anyone, it could be an engineer, how do you balance the need to go deep in something and keep the perfectionist mentality of that super high quality output versus the need to be agile and responding to new markets and things like that? What are your thoughts there?
Well, it's interesting. We've always had that challenge. And at times companies who work so hard to perfect were too late to market.
Mm-hmm.
And the agile methodology is to start with your customers in mind and get them prototypes out and let them perfect it. They're smarter than we, right? Now, I would guard that with safety because you don't want something to do harm.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing this with the coronavirus vaccine. It's not just a matter of having a vaccine. We need to test it for efficacy and safety, as tough as that is.
Yeah.
So I think the leader could ask the core design team, what matters and who cares? If we're 90%, can we get some customers to trial this and then crowdsource how we make it better?
Mm-hmm.
So the leader doesn't have to decide alone. Ask the team, ask the customers. And which is a coaching approach, right? Someone today asked a question, emailed several of us who are colleagues in the same city, asking about how to run a better meeting for talent reviews to talk about talent in the HR space. And how do you do it on Zoom? And will the conversations be diluted? And we talked about go to breakout rooms to make them smaller so you can have deeper conversations. Mm-hmm. And then I said, and why don't you ask your leaders, HR representative, figuring this out, why don't you ask them? They may have some great ideas. Mm-hmm. So it's coaching. People have these answers within. Ask other people.
Mm-hmm. And there's in design thinking, you mentioned prototyping, there's an absolute need that, going back to that idea of big companies or companies that are used to being perfectionist, that they fought against anyway in the past. You mentioned can be a struggle at times, or has been a struggle at times in the past, is when you're prototyping, you purposefully cannot make your prototype look like a finished product. Because if you do, then the only real feedback you're going to get is a sign off, a yes or no. Oh, I like that, I don't like that. If it purposefully looks incomplete, you go, oh, you know what I could add? I would see this, and I would add this, and I would add that. And from just a design thinking methodology, it opens up the construct. And even just framing the way we speak about it at times. Sometimes something like an org and talent review, there's a formal process around it, right? So some of it's going to feel baked anyway. But you can qualify a conversation like that, or you can qualify a product or a product as, hey, we're still working on this. We really, you might have to go a little farther in something that seems baked to add to it that, well, we really need input. And ask those follow-up questions. If you were to change this, how might you change it? Those kinds of things.
Right. It is design thinking to have multiple ideas over and over again. Often companies are under pressure by stakeholders or investors to get to market. Mm-hmm. But in the sociology people side of things, such as HR, ask others. When I was, I'm currently on a short furlough, but when I was working a couple of weeks ago, I was working on our organization's return to work materials for leaders and associates. And we're all going to have to learn new ways to protect ourselves and protect others from coronavirus. So we've heard it every day: social distancing, hand washing, various techniques. We're all going to be new at this and focused on it. But the other side of it is the psychological safety of people coming back to work and making a mistake, forgetting their mask, leaving it at their desk, or it's in their lunchbox, getting too close to someone, various mistakes. So we're going to need to care for each other. And here's another acronym for you under the CARE I came up with was communicate often. And to me, that's a lot about asking. The A is acknowledge concerns, respond, or research for them, and empathize with others when we make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes. I mean, I've been wearing a mask, taking a walk. The other day, I was so excited about something, I walked out, I forgot my mask. And I've been the mask queen in my neighborhood. I forgot it.
And the other part about the safety, if you think about like forgetting something or making a mistake, is on the job. People even who have been experts at something for years, taking a decent chunk of time away from their work. There's something about reacclimating, missing a step in a process, something like that. And having compassion with each other, but still being able to provide, and I know we hate the word feedback per se, but being able to call attention to something in a way that says, hey, we're all coming back to this.
Right.
Some of our processes are 30, 40 steps, and
right.
It used to be something you could do off the top of your head, and you miss one thing. I think it can be easy for environments where you have some people away and some people back. There could be a tendency to not provide that space or that safety for folks that are coming back, if they miss a step or they make a mistake in their actual functional role. Even thinking through our processes and the type of work we output, I forgot to run that by that director before sending the communication, or something like that. Those social structures or processes as well.
I once heard Tom Peters speak in Palm Springs a long time ago, and he would tell new employees, I want you to go out and make 10 mistakes as fast as you can. Because that way they're growing and learning. So it wasn't go out and be perfect with my company's policies and procedures. It's go make 10 mistakes as fast as you can and tell me what you did. So perhaps when we return, leaders could say, what if we had a tell your mistake, kind of a fun thing where we're allowed to say where we've messed up. And this is often done in healthcare, right?
Mm.
When surgeries were done on the wrong leg, right? There needs to be some kind of environment where mistakes are okay. Just to say, messed up, but my fix I found was even better. We're going to change our process.
That seems like something definitely that could be easier said than done.
Yep.
For sure. And
Right.
even we could easily forgive leaders and the pressure they're under for um, not taking that path. How might we encourage leaders to go down that type of road around of forgiveness, of creating a space of forgiveness for people to be able to admit it, learn from it, share it? I know you mentioned like something where people could, like a weekly cadence or something. What mistakes did you make this week, and what did you learn from it, and
Right.
that kind of thing. But is there anything else you can think of that could help leaders come up with a way to handle some of those inevitable kind of missteps or mistakes?
Right. So I come back to our coaching check-in question. So let's say someone's flustered, they made a mistake in a process and an engineering design and a presentation. The leader can say, well, wait, let's step back. Let's talk about what worked first. Because like 90% of what you just did worked, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's honor that. And then where'd you get stuck? What's the mistake you're talking about? And what'd you learn? And how might you avoid that going forward? And how can we help the team avoid it? Because I have a feeling other people are making the same mistake.
Mm-hmm.
So it's acknowledging what's gone well first and letting that individual say what they learned from it. But there's nothing punitive.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Thank you.
I remember when I worked at Cleveland Clinic, we were working very hard on our culture and how we treat patients and families. And it mattered in many ways, including financially. And I remember when we were working on service recovery and an employee had not done something, that one approach was to say, I see you weren't able to help Mrs. Smith. How can I help you? How might you handle that in the future? You weren't able to help Mrs. Smith. Not, I see you brushed her off, or you're not living out our values, or I'm disappointed in you. I see you weren't able to help her then. What might help next time?
Mm.
So I think to me, it's all about honor and empathy. We're not perfect. We spend our lives trying to be, but look at us in the world now.
I'll speak for yourself. I'm about there. No. Yeah, it's going to be hard. And I think everyone needs to take a breath and remember that.
Right.
Once in a while. Maybe there's something from, as I think about the structural type of element, as much as some of the other things one might schedule, it's just scheduling a little pop-up to just take a breath. This is hard.
Right. And there are apps that we use on our phone, right? Like Breathe and Calm and Headspace. There are literally apps. Some people have them on their watch device about breathing. And I tell you, with this frequent hand washing, we're going to be needing to go away from our desks to do that. We're going to need breaks to take a walk and process, or call home and check in. So when we return physically to work, it's going to be a different place. Mm-hmm. And our leaders need the same thing. So I trust that our leaders will know how to do this because they've gone through the same experience.
Awesome. This is fun. Woo! Thank you so much, Allison, and thank all of you for watching. To connect with Allison, I've provided a link in the description to her LinkedIn profile, along with some links to resources we hope you find useful as you get back to work yourselves, and as your teams get back to work. Please stay safe and healthy, and as always, I hope you find yourself exactly where you're meant to be. Thank you.